Strap in for the thrill ride because we're going to talk about a guy that died in 1893 named Josephus Collett. And he was a successful businessman that lived in Terre Haute, Indiana. And you might not have heard of him. He's relatively obscure unless you go to Collett Park, named after him in Terre Haute. And this is a Seattle true crime podcast, and this has nothing to do with Seattle. Josephus Collett never went to Seattle or spoke of it or even knew it existed. And as far as crime goes, he's a capitalist, and what is capitalism if not organized crime and a crime against humanity? So here we go, the thrill ride, an obscure guy. He died in 1893. And we looked into it. The reason I know of Josephus Collett is that he was one of a group of investors that bought out Anton Mayer's brewery in Terre Haute, Indiana. And Collett was involved in all kinds of businesses and successful at all of them. He was born in 1832. And he was an excellent student. He went to Wabash College, but had to drop out because he had some kind of eye disease. His older brother, John, became a well-known geologist. Josephus and his other brother, Stephen Jr., opened a general store. Then they started transporting pork and grain, started a pork packing firm. Josephus sold his interest in the firm and got involved in the railroad business. This is 1860s, 1870s. It's a gold rush for capitalists who knew how to exploit this kind of government subsidy of the railroads. The government is like, we need railroads going out west. We'll give you 10 free land and 10 miles of that land and in either direction of the tracks. And you can set up a town and do all this stuff and make a fortune. And Collett was in on that. So he's going to be president of the Evansville, Terre Haute, and Chicago Railroad until that gets sold to the Chicago and Eastern Illinois Railroad in 1880. He consults on starting the Terre Haute School of Industrial Science, which is now the Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology. And Rose-Hulman is a thriving private college and a leading STEM institution to this day. This information is from the Terre Haute First National Bank. So he had investments. He had wetting his beak in all kinds of businesses. President and principal stockholder of the Austin and Northwestern Railroad in Texas, Genesee Railroad in New York, Nevada Central Railroad, Otter Creek Valley Railroad in western Indiana. In 1885, he was an investor in the Coronado Beach Company, which purchased a desolate 4,100-acre peninsula adjoining San Diego to construct the Hotel del Coronado, America's celebrated seaside resort. Former Terre Haute architect James Reed designed the extraordinary hotel. He was a lifelong bachelor. He gave 21 acres to establish Collett Park in Terre Haute, and it's kind of like a wealthy community now surrounds the beautiful park. And he and his brother, another successful businessman, started the Collett Home for Orphans near the Collett family farm. It wasn't finished until 9 years after Josephus died. He was only 60 when he died. And it was in operation for 90 years, and then it was destroyed by a fire in 1996. The property is, according to Terre Haute First National Bank, currently the site of Noah's Ark Daycare. So Josephus Collett, he's a lifelong bachelor, and his sister, Clara, married Crawford Fairbanks, another Terre Haute businessman. And interestingly, he owned a large private collection of geological and Native American artifacts, numbering in excess of 14,000 pieces. I wish I could find more information about that collection. That's fairly amazing. So, kind of a cultured guy studying Native American art. Oh, I know his brother is a geologist. Maybe that's where some of that comes from. And yeah, successful capitalist. And all roads lead to Anton Mayer's brewery. In 1889, Anton Mayer sold his brewery to a syndicate, Crawford Fairbanks, Josephus Collett, John Beggs, and Demis Deming, for $300,000. The purchasers are all Terre Haute businessmen. It is said that the purchasers will turn the brewery over to an English beer syndicate at a big advance in a few weeks. This is the largest single transfer ever made here. Does that mean that's the biggest business deal in Terre Haute ever? That's odd. It's from the Indiana State Sentinel, October 16th, 1889. This brewery was started by a Mr. Mauger in 1855. Anton Mayer became the sole owner in 1869. One of the first breweries to use Flodler chip casks of glass enameled steel. Produced 2,500 barrels of beer a year, increasing to 2,500 a month by 1889. And that's when it became the Terre Haute Brewing Company. Collett is a white guy, and on his paternal side, his lineage can be traced to the reign of Henry VII, during which Sir Henry Collett twice served as Lord Mayor of London. Josephus was from a family of 8, 3 boys and 5 girls. He was the 5th child, so the middle child, always the successful one. This is from the biography of Indiana, 1889. Doubtless, one of the fundamental secrets of his vast successes as a financier lay in the fact that his vigorous integrity inspired universal confidence, enabling him to command enormous sums of money at any time. So vast a human force, crowned by a lofty integrity and a spirit of goodwill to men, defies all rules of measurement, even as do the sands of the sea. And they're not talking about Donald Trump there, they're talking about Josephus Collett. But what kind of guy was Josephus Collett? Bachelor, millionaire, philanthropist, integrity? Again, that's all you have in this world of deep fakes and everything else. Your integrity as a person is all you have. Here's from the Plymouth Tribune, July 3rd, 1902. He never kept account books. Josephus Collett, Indiana capitalist, left memoranda and scraps. An interesting story of the eccentricities of the late Josephus Collett, a capitalist of this city, Terre Haute, who had interests extending from ocean to ocean but kept no books, was scrupulously careful in the saving of pennies but gave liberally to education and to help the deserving, is disclosed by the executors who are settling Collett's estate. And again, his estate is not settled because there's always bickering when a rich person dies and people are fighting over the money because they're greedy bastards. When Collett died, his desk was found filled with envelopes and memoranda, some of which were amusing. As, for instance, on some envelopes was the one word swindles, and the contents were certificates of stock or bonds of varied schemes. So he has a sense of humor about what business is all about. It's all a swindle. On other envelopes was the word scraps. In these envelopes were the loose ends of extensive business transactions. There were many notes for small loans he had made, a large proportion of them to young men and young women who wanted a college education. He was an old bachelor, but he always wanted to help and care for young people, And one of his bequests was $75,000 for an orphan's home and $75,000 for Rose Polytechnic Institute. He did much telegraphing and knew the cost of messages to all parts of the country to a cent, and would ask for the pennies of change. Then he would hand to some young fellow he thought to be deserving several $100s to pay his way in college. In other words, he's a penny pincher, but then he's super generous, giving those pennies to help people. Sort of like the late Paul Allen was a notorious, he's going to bicker with you about an extra 13 cents on an invoice, but then he's going to go and buy himself like a Dali or a Picasso for $40 million. Oh, wait, that's not like Josephus Collett, because Josephus Collett was a charitable man, and Paul Allen just wanted to buy a fancy painting so he could impress David Geffen and his other fair weather friends. And now he's gone, and his monstrous sister Jody controls his billions and the Seattle Seahawks.
Tortillas, oh yeah. It's supposed to be tortillas, oh tortillas.
Joseph is wetting his beak in many different troughs.
Indianapolis Journal, 1884. The Vigo Cattle Company, incorporated at Terre Haute, capital stock $500,000. And the stockholders, mostly railroad men, including Josephus Collett. So he's investing in a cattle fattening operation in Wyoming territory. It's not even a state yet. That's incredible. The Wild West. Who settled it? Some cowboys riding in, or capitalist railroad guys? Well, you figure that out. The Evening Bulletin in Maysville, Kentucky. Collett is everywhere. September 25th, 1889. General Manager Ewing of the Mackey Lines has tendered his resignation. Ewing will accept the position of cashier of a new bank to be established in Indianapolis by Josephus Collett and other Indiana capitalists. And Mackey is a hugely successful railroad guy. He's actually so rich he makes Josephus look sort of like a chump. And they are partners, although some say that Collett was really just a front man for Mackey's schemes. The Forest City Times, Forest City, Arkansas, February 17th, 1893. Josephus Collett, the richest citizen of Terre Haute, Indiana, and one of the wealthiest of Indiana, died Monday, age 62 years. I think historians determined later he's actually 60. Then just random from the same newspaper page, J.B. Church of St. Paul, Minnesota, a traveling man, committed suicide at the Merchants Hotel in Omaha by taking morphine. He left a letter to a friend attributing his act to whiskey and gambling. Yeah, morphine, that's the way to go. Back then, you could just go buy it at the store. This is apocalyptic. Fish in the Illinois River are said to be dying by the thousands for some unknown reason, but it is believed they are poisoned from foul sewers. The stench from the decaying fish is said to be terrible. So Collett, not really the most criminal of capitalists. He is involved in a scheme to monopolize textbooks for Indiana schools. July 30th, 1889, the bond of the Indiana School Book Company filed yesterday. That includes Collett, also his buddy DJ Mackey, and others. They have a contract with the State Board of School Commissioners to furnish schools with educational books, arithmetic, and whatnot. And it's a monopoly. No one else is allowed to buy books. So they're using their political muscle to get in on the textbook industry. and Collett is in for $100,000 on this one. That's a lot of money back then. And so he's a varied business interest. Yeah, a lot of railroad stuff, but just anything to make a buck, really, and just keep his life exciting, keep him busy, I guess. So yeah, some American capitalism at its finest. Companies bickering with government bodies over who is going to get to sell textbooks to public schools. Yeah, we have, whereas in the opinion of this committee, the spelling book offered by the Indiana School Book Company is inferior as to matter to the eclectic school book, which is by the Bowen Merrill Company. Resolved that the bid of the Indiana School Book Company offering to furnish the spelling book in question for use in the schools in Indiana will be rejected. Business. Indianapolis Journal, September 28, 1899. Valuable estate divided. Court orders the bequests of Josephus Collett paid. Judge Piety of the Circuit Court today granted the petition of Joshua Jump and J.H. Bogart, executors of the will of the late Josephus Collett, by which they can make a distribution of 107,000 of the bequests made by Mr. Collett. He died 6 years ago, but soon after his death, creditors of D.J. Mackey brought suit against the Collett estate on the grounds that Mr. Collett endorsed Mackey's paper for $500,000, growing out of the sale by Mr. Collett of the Danville and Ohio River Road. So Collett dies, and his business partner D.J. Mackey is the first one to claim, "Oh, he owes me money, so that estate is mine." Oh, greedy bastard.
Gone are my blues and gone are my tears. I've got good news to shout in your ears. The long lost dollar has come back to the fold. With silver you can turn your dreams to gold. Oh, we're in the money, we're in the money. We've got a lot of what it takes to get along.
So in the end, his money gets distributed mostly to good causes. The Rose Polytechnic Institute gets $75,000, or they have to settle with the estate for $50,000. They were promised $75,000. The orphans' home that he sets up gets $40,000. Minnie Campbell, a niece, gets $5,000. William Van Vliet, a tenant on one of Mr. Collett's farms, gets $10,000. The estate of his late brother John, a geologist, state geologist of Indiana, gets $10,000. And then there's another $200,000. That's big money in these days going to other family members. And again, DJ Mackey's fighting over these business deals when Collett passes away. And the upshot of the matter was that Mr. Collett unloaded his property on the E&TH, then a big and prosperous corporation, for $300,000. So money that Mackey says was promised him, he actually had sold that business elsewhere. Mackey actually ends up as a failure and loses his empire, and his railroads all go into the hands of receivers. Collett might have had rheumatism of the spine, according to some newspapers, and so he was bedridden with that painful malady and eventually died. In 1902, Josephus's brother turns up, gives knives to his friends. Stephen S. Collett of Newport, Indiana, is giving away cedar paper knives to all his friends, said Lars Whitcomb, who has recently returned from a visit to his old home in Vermilion County. Stephen Collett, he continued, is a brother of the late John Collett, who was state geologist, and of the late Josephus Collett, who was a prominent Terre Haute railroad man. Stephen Collett is now an invalid and is wheeled about in a chair. He spends much of his time whittling out paper knives from cedar. It is his desire to give all of his friends something to remember him after he is dead, and he presents them with these knives. D.J. Mackey, well, he lost one fortune and then started another one. That's the American dream, right? The Lamar Register, Lamar, Colorado, September 26, 1900. To regain a fortune. D.J. Mackey, the former railroad magnate, who, having lost one fortune, has just begun the battle of life anew at the age of 67, is one of the most remarkable of Indiana's businessmen. He has wiped out liabilities upward of $500,000 by going into bankruptcy, and now with millionaire Fairbanks, of course, one of their cronies of Terre Haute, at his back, he will try the hazard of a new fortune. He was born in Evansville in 1833. At 15, he was left with a mother to support, and he rose from office boy to clerk, from clerk to businessman. He invested his surplus capital in railroads. And then, he started the fatal experiment of making Evansville, Indiana, the great city of the Wests. And by degrees, he lost his holdings. His affairs became hopelessly entangled, and then the crash came. So I went down the rabbit hole with the Indiana Textbook Commission. Yeah, I'm a nerd and boring. And theirs was in the 50s during the McCarthy era, Mrs. Thomas J. White. She thought that the story Robin Hood had a communist slant. She objected to certain passages in Robin Hood. Unhappily, the luckless boy slew a knight of Lancashire, and to pay the heavy penalty exacted from him to save his rights, and then in parentheses, a slam at lawyers, I was forced to see my goods. Besides this, Robin, my lands are pledged until a certain day, parentheses, a slam at mortgage holders, to an abbot, parentheses, a slam at the church, living close by her at St. Mary's Abbey. So Dr. Herman L. Shibler, who's the Indianapolis school superintendent at the time, he said Robin Hood is not going to be banned in Indianapolis. Quote, Robin Hood isn't any worse to read than some of the things children see on television. And then the story went viral, and the sheriff of Nottingham came to the defense of Robin Hood. This is from the Indy Star, by the way.
In the gallant days when history hung on the flight of an arrow or the slash of a sword, when feudal barons ravaged the countryside to live in pomp and splendor, when one man alone dared challenge the might of his country's oppressors, Robin Hood, outlaw of Sherwood Forest, and his stalwart band, robbing the rich to feed the poor.
Radio Moscow got into the act by announcing that author N. Gribachev had published a new ballad on Robin Hood in the communist newspaper Pravda. El Humanité, an organization of the French Communist Party, went so far as to make a tongue-in-cheek claim that White objected to Little Red Riding Hood based on the color of her hood. So in response to this nonsense, 5 Indiana University students tagged themselves Robin Hood's Merry Men and formed the Green Feather Movement. They peppered the campus bulletin boards with green feathers in a protest of McCarthyism. Fuck, dog break. Dog break. The movement spread to campuses around the country. It's funny, we have that narrative, that Russia bullshit. That's the only thing people can seem to go after Trump for. It's just utter hogwash. Same thing, the Red Scare in the 50s. It's good to know some college students were like, fuck this anti-communist bullshit. Ada White, who narked on Robin Hood, would continue complaining about books and would die in 1980. So the 5 students from Indiana University at Bloomington, isn't that where the movie Breaking Away about the bicyclist is staged? They started the Green Feather Movement. Bernard Bray, Mary Dawson, Edward Napier, Blas Davia, and Janine Carter. They went to a local poultry farm. This is from the Zinn Education Project. Gathered sacks of feathers, and then they took them to the basement of a nearby house and dyed them green to represent the feather worn by Robin Hood. Then they spread them throughout the campus. That is a great political prank and stunt. So yeah, long before the tear gas and cops beating on students, the Green Feather Movement inspired solidarity actions on campuses throughout the country, illustrating the power of student activism. This is from Allison Keisha. That's from the Zinn Education Project. These displays of activism and solidarity were important challenges to the abusive power of McCarthyism at the time. As students and teachers are faced with attempts to censor people's history, the Green Feather movement inspires us to support the right to teach outside the textbook. Absolutely. And people are always right-wing Bible nut psychopaths are always complaining about books and trying to censor material. One thing this pandemic has taught us is that we do not need school. I don't know, but Josephus Collett, his book publishing is an interesting... He actually wrote a book called Spelling Book. So he invested in this textbook, regional textbook publisher with political ties, and actually wrote one of the books. He says, the experiment of dispensing entirely with the spelling book as a textbook in schools has not met with the success that its advocates anticipated, and the return to a word book of some kind is becoming general. The book demanded by the times, however, is not merely a compilation of words arranged in columns to be memorized by the pupil, but a series of language exercises teaching the origin, structure, sound, and meaning of words, presented in an attractive and suggestive manner. So there you go. He's off on the right track with that, contributing to society. Like, let's do a spelling book that's not just a list of words you have to memorize. Yeah, the Indiana School Book Company actually gets a law passed requiring schools in that state to buy their books exclusively, and that is challenged in court. But yeah, Josephus Collett is a busy man. He's always got something going on. We have the Indiana State Federation of Labor is asking publicly why these school book publishers are non-union and questioning the Indiana School Book Company's exclusive contract. Let's confuse people by looking at documents from the Indiana Supreme Court. March 1885, William Collett, being embarrassed financially and unable to pay his debts as they matured, made a voluntary assignment of all his property in trust for the benefit of his creditors. So William Collett is declaring bankruptcy. His father, Josephus Collett, deceased, and his last will and testament was admitted to probate. But Josephus Collett didn't have any kids. He was a bachelor. So I've just confused everyone with this, and we'll move on. One of the Collett's cronies, Crawford Fairbanks, married Josephus's sister. A federal grand jury is going to investigate political corruption in Indiana, and he's going to look at the Taggart Crawford Fairbanks machine. So again, businessmen, buying up politicians. That's the way it works here in this country. Has that changed? No, the structure is slightly different, but it's the same basic idea. Crawford Fairbanks, still around in 1914, from the Richmond Palladium and Sun Telegram in Richmond, Indiana. 18 reasons why the Republican Party should receive your vote. This is actually an advertisement. Democracy in the state of Indiana is at present controlled and dominated by a coterie of politicians headed by Tom Taggart, Crawford Fairbanks, and others. The only way to oust them is to defeat the Democratic candidates who are their personal henchmen. And so, again, they're Democrats in name only, but, it's really a one-party system disguised as a lame two-party system, even back then. Reason 16, the only way to defeat the Taggart-Crawford Fairbanks control of the state government is to vote for the Republican Party. No other party can defeat it. It is now conceded that the Progressive Party has no chance to win. Boy, that's a story as old as Bernie Sanders, huh? Demons that call themselves Democrats, Pelosi and Schumer, whatnot, Cuomo, they're devils, and they're no better than the Republicans. Democrat paper predicts party defeat. Evansville, Indiana, February 6, 1912. The Evansville Courier, a Democratic newspaper of wide influence in southern Indiana, says a state ticket named from governor to members of the Supreme Court by Crawford Fairbanks and Tom Taggart has no more chance of carrying Indiana next fall than the socialists have of electing a president of the New York Stock Exchange. Crawford Fairbanks was one of Indiana's richest men. He had interest in a brewery, of course, Anton Mayer's Brewery, but also he's a distiller. Fairbanks was born in 1843 near Terre Haute. He studied by candlelight after finishing his farm chores. He answered the call and went into the Civil War, mustered into the 129th Indiana Infantry Regiment. His unit was employed on Sherman's march on Atlanta, saw some hot fighting along the way, including battles of Resaca, Decatur, and Franklin. That last battle at Franklin was a crushing blow for the Confederacy, resulting in devastating losses, and 14 rebel generals either killed, wounded, or captured. In 1872, he's 29, he marries Clara T. Collett, who is Josephus's sister. And they had a daughter named Sarah, and they lived with an Irish servant girl. And as with most Indiana capitalists of the era, Fairbanks produced a Muslim-themed whiskey. El-Kader whiskey came in a flask or quart-size bottles. It shows the care that Fairbanks put into the marketing of his products. The label is a striking gold color with the whiskey name in an elegant script. Even more interesting is the reverse side that carries the seal of El-Kader, an Algerian Muslim who fought against French rule. The sword, half moon, and star, all Arabic symbols. This is likely the only American whiskey named for a Muslim hero. And you can see online there's an actual bottle with a nicely preserved label of the El-Kader whiskey. So he's rich and more or less a good guy, Fairbanks, this guy. And he owns some hotels and stuff, and he travels, and then you go to his grave site. Like many rich people, he wants to be remembered as such, and it's this four-columned Greek revival style mausoleum, big, giant, expensive thing. So who does remember Josephus Collett? Well, nobody until now. Dog break. Well, we have brought back Josephus Collett from obscurity. And there's a park in Terre Haute, a beautiful park. It's actually the Collett Park Neighborhood Historic District. Is a fancy residential area. He donated the park after the park was built. Between 1900 and 1920, people built fancy Queen Anne style or classic or colonial revival style big, McMansions, you could say, around this park. And actually the whole area is in the National Register of Historic Places. I hope someone goes to that park and then is like, who is Collett? And then maybe there's a plaque there that says something about him. Who knows? As far as American capitalists go, he's not that evil. But again, while guys like Fairbanks or Collett prospered during this era, we were wiping out Native Americans in the West to make way for their railroads. So that's the dark side. I mean, I can't find any criminal behavior or deviant behavior on this fucking guy. He's clean as a whistle, except for that textbook scandal or just using political influence for his business. But that's just the business of business in America. So, not relatively benign capitalist taking advantage of the corporate welfare of our government subsidy of the railroads, basically. But, Yeah, also who wouldn't want to own interest in a brewery, right? I mean, that's cool. Is there anyone as noteworthy and famous hailing from Terre Haute, Indiana as Josephus Collett? Oh yeah, Eugene V. Debs, prominent socialist, draft resistor. They actually threw him in jail for resisting World War I, and he developed health problems and died soon after. He was one of the founding members of the IWW, the Industrial Workers of the World, and a great man, a person of courage and integrity, not in the way of capitalist Josephus Collett, who's like, oh yeah, he's not going to screw you on a business deal like Trump. He's a man of integrity. Debs is a man of integrity because he's not about wealth accumulation. He's about trying to help his fellow man, trying to get a square deal from the corporate fuckheads that have always monopolized American life. Indiana is a bizarre place. There's a lot of fast food places. Every town has the same commercial strip with the same corporate crap. And none of that money, if you own the McDonald's franchise in Terre Haute, I guess some of that money stays in the community. The people that work there don't get paid enough to really impact the economy, and all the rest of the money goes back to corporate, as they say. Terre Haute is also, unfortunately, home to the United States Penitentiary of Terre Haute, high security federal prison, and also the Federal Execution Chamber. Unfortunately, there were just some executions there.
And as we update our breaking news out of Terre Haute, where the execution of Daniel Lewis Lee is now complete.
20 minutes in front of 9, and we want to get to breaking news. Our sources inside the federal prison in Terre Haute say that Wesley Perkey has now been executed. The Supreme Court cleared the way for that federal execution in Terre Haute.
This is where the U.S. sends the worst of the worst federal prisoners, including Timothy McVeigh, a bunch of white supremacists, and mass murderer Dylan Roof. I'm sad to report RTV6 in Indianapolis. July 17th of this year, 3 executions in 4 days at Terre Haute Federal Prison, same place where they snuffed out the life of Timothy McVeigh. The U.S. government on Friday put to death an Iowa chemistry student turned meth kingpin, convicted of killing 5 people, capping a week in which the Trump administration restored federal executions after a 17-year hiatus. Dustin Honkin, 52, he killed witnesses to stop them from testifying in his drug case.
The federal prison in Terre Haute is hiring. It's hosting a career fair tomorrow. That's happening at the training center across from the water treatment plant in Terre Haute. The Bureau of Prisons is hiring several positions, including correctional officers, also medical officers and psychology staff.
Daniel Lee Lewis, a white supremacist piece of shit. He doesn't deserve to die. No one does. The death penalty is barbaric, but he killed a family in the 90s as part of a plot to build a whites-only nation. It went ahead after the U.S. Supreme Court gave it a green light in a 5-4 decision. Our story of Josephus Collett, Indiana capitalist, is really the story of America. Starts with some railroad guys getting subsidized by the government to wipe out the Indians and lay down the tracks and make some people rich. And it ends with executions at the federal penitentiary in Terre Haute, Indiana. Completely, I mean, these people they executed are bastards, but the death penalty is satanic. And our white devil of a president, Donald Trump, could have prevented this. I mean, they instigated it as part of their tough on crime sort of campaign strategy. So we'll leave you with this. Dustin Honkin died by lethal injection just last week.
We're continuing our breaking news coverage tonight. The third execution of the week just took place at the federal prison in Terre Haute.
He recited the poem Heaven Haven before his death. I have desired to go where springs not fail. And again, this is the real life Breaking Bad psychopath that killed a bunch of witnesses that were going to drop a dime on him for his meth dealing. To fields where flies no sharp and sighted hail, and a few lilies blow. And I have asked to be where no storms come, where the green swell is the havens dumb, and out of the swing of the sea. Doomed Planet, the podcast, episode 38. We went down the rabbit hole with this one. Find out more at doomedplanet.com. Goodbye.
We're in the money.
5, 6, 7, 8. Goodbye. This is the end of the song.